Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the exclusive encore talkback for the Cosby satire. This is your host, Erica, and we just want to welcome you and hope that you are just as excited as we are to kind of dive into some questions and get a behind the scenes look into how this incredible production came together. So, without further ado, let's bring up our playwright, the lovely, the talented Dr. Nave Phillips.
Hey.
Got my
I was just like trying to hurry up and share this on Facebook. So I'm ready.
And share.
Okay, I was typing too much.
Okay,
Join us for the talk back. That's all I'm going to put. Boom. Share.
It's the writer in you. The writer in you wants to create a whole post to share.
I was trying to do that before this thing started, but they told me I couldn't do that.
Yes. So welcome. Congratulations on just bringing forth your baby. Every artist deserves to have their moment of applause. So I'm going to give you a round of applause. But also wanted to dive into some questions. So the first question, we all want to know, what inspired this story?
The inspiration behind, the Cosby satires is kind of the obvious, right? Bill Cosby, his guilty verdict, recently overturned verdict for sexual assault. When the verdict came down, Twitter was awry. Every social media platform, people were debating back and forth about whether they believed this person or that person, whether, what side of the fence they were on. And from just my experience debating with people on social media, I said, okay, I gathered that it seemed like the underlying kind of the thread was people's ignorance around consent, what it is and how it impacts lives, their lives and the lives of others. And so I stayed up all night just like writing, putting a Cosby satire, which was part one of the Cosby satires. And then, after workshopping that for a couple of years, I workshopped it through the Atlanta Black Theater Festival. I did a stage reading there, and a good friend of ours, Alvin, directed that piece. And afterwards, he said, well, what are you going to do with it now? Are you going to expand it to a full length? And I thought, well, maybe I'll just add a part two. And, thematically, I can explore a different topic, which is a woman's right to choose. And that's sort of how Virtue in a Different World came about. And I've been, workshopping that piece over the years as well. And so this, what many people have seen tonight or, a couple of weeks ago in person, was the first time that both of these one-act plays were able to get up on their feet in front of a live audience.
So that's incredible that you kind of have some foresight here, because even though it was a couple years ago and now the verdict was overturned recently, like it means that you have a connection to getting the message out, but also you're a visionary, because to be able to do this, it takes vision. So it's pretty dope and that it's so timely. And shout out to Alvin, like pushing the work forward. That's what great creative friends are for.
Yes, he always helps me push my work forward. So I'm incredibly grateful for him. But yeah, the topic, just aside, just beyond Cosby, it really, this piece doesn't even mention him by name, other than, his last name, the Cosby satires. But the actual work doesn't mention him by name. It's not focused on him at all. It really is focused on the lesson that he didn't learn and so many other people did not learn, which is about how to protect yourself and that of others, how to, not be a predator in the bedroom. And it's just a lesson that a lot of people have not learned. And so I felt it important to, put it in my art, put the message in my art, in a creative way, in a humorous way, in a satirical way. So
dope. So Speaking of satire, why don't you go ahead and kind of explain to us what exactly, for anyone that may not know, what exactly is a satire and how did you come about building that in this project?
Yeah. So the easiest way that I would, define a satire, it's just the use of humor or irony to ridicule or expose, criticize, some aspects of society. And so in this case, this two satires, we're playing off of this wholesomeness of the Cosby show in a different world, right? That in it of itself, it's very ironic how we play on that. But then also the themes in the show, we're really trying to drive forth a message about, what it means to have safe and consensual sex on one hand, but also in Virtue in a Different World, the message is around just the woman's right to decide what happens to her body in any state. But the use of humor to drive that message and the use of irony and exaggeration to drive forth that message is, in a nutshell, what satires are.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that although, of course, the title has Cosby's name in it and not mentioning him throughout the performance, why did you choose to decentralize Mr. H?
So, for those who have not had a chance to watch the Cosby satires, Mr. H is, in a sense, the Heathcliff Huxtable character in the show, and he doesn't have a major. He has a major role, but he's not the center or the central character in the play. The women are the central characters in the play, and that was a conscious effort. Women rule the world, and it's just about time that that's reflected on the stage. I rarely write from the perspective of a male character. I thought it important, particularly for the message that these two one-act plays convey, to put the women at the center, to put the women in the driving seat, to teach those lessons. Because in many households, African American households and households in general, the women are the ones who are in charge. And so I find it very ironic that in, television shows and film and TV, the male characters somehow become the one who are making the decisions. But in reality, at least in my reality and in many people's reality, our mothers, our matriarchs are the ones who make those decisions, who makes those calls, who teach those lessons. And so I wanted to reflect a bit of my reality.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I agree, like going behind the scenes, it's important to see who's really writing those narratives, because typically you look at the room and there's a lot of men in the room and there's not a lot of women. So that's why that story gets pushed forward. So for you to make sure that the women are forefront and center, it just goes to show, like, when a woman has creative power and power behind the pen, our stories get pushed forward. So congratulations on this. So no production can be birthed without a team. And so we just want to bring up your lovely director, Miss Irvin. Yes. So you were in the hot seat. You are now in the hot seat. But I want to just honor Miss Kelly Hager, I hope I'm pronouncing the last name correctly, that this was such an amazing performance, both acts. And I don't really have a question. I just wanted to say that, and how immensely talented you are, and the director and the cast. Everything was absolutely amazing. So,
thank you, Kelly. Cool. Kelly and I used to work together at WJZ. So we're WJZ TV alumni.
I love it.
We survived.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm really excited to kick this off. And that was such a beautiful compliment to bring in our director. So, Miss Nellis, how would you sum up your vision as a director, and what helped to shape what we saw tonight on stage?
So here's the thing. Shanae knows I am a lover of Black television sitcoms. That is my life. I live it. I breathe it. So when she first did the stage reading of Pudding, I think I read for Sandy. And I was just like, Shanae, you gotta do something with this like ASAP. And if you do, I need to be a part of it. Somewhere fast forward, Virtue was birthed, and she asked me, she's like, what do you think about choreographing the Byron Hall Step Captain? I was like, well, yeah, I can do that in my sleep. I'm ready. So when she asked me to take on the entire production, there was no hesitation on my end whatsoever. My goal, my vision for the production overall was to bring my love of sitcom to the stage for people to experience, whether it be a laugh track here or there, breaking the fourth wall, just, those quirky moments that we know and live for in 90s television sitcoms. So I wanted to, and hopefully that was conveyed throughout from beginning to end, but I really wanted to take those elements of television and bring them to the stage for people to enjoy. Hitting on moments of nostalgia, but also really striking those important key moments for the message that Shanae, as a writer, so eloquently conveyed for us. So that was my goal. Hopefully that was conveyed, and everyone enjoyed that.
And how, this is just a question coming from my end as far as like directing and being able, you were once reading for this role and then to come out and to direct. Did you see anything different that you wanted to bring out in new characters? Or did you because when you're in one character space, you give life to it, but then directing it, you see it from a different perspective. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think what helped me to continue to build on this vision was the amazingly talented cast that I had.
Yeah.
So just allowing them the choice in the space to create their characters as we were going, both virtually and in person, really helped me to kind of mold what was happening there. There were so many comedic moments that happened accidentally that we just kept in the show, and we could do a little pop-up video at some other point in time. But a lot of those things, the choice that my cast rather made for their characters really helped to let that grow. It really wasn't even about what I read before. It was just in the moment, who do I have now? What are we going to do? And keeping that sitcom to the stage, theme alive throughout.
Mm-hmm. So, as you said, your cast.
My babies.
Your babies.
Yes.
Bring the children of Nelly's to the screen.
Yes. Bring forth the children.
Baby
1, baby 2, baby 3, baby 4.
How are you going to pay for college? Whoa. Wow. So congratulations to all of you. Round of applause to all of you for being a part of this. And not only are Shanae and Elise my good friends, I'm just always proud to see my friends create. So thank you all for bringing their vision to the screen and to the forefront. So the first question I have is actually for Sierra. I see that you were the intimacy choreographer. Can you tell us a little bit more about your role and what that entails as far as the stage?
Yeah, so very basically, my job as an intimacy choreographer is to choreograph any moments of intimacy in the show. That way it's repeatable, and that way we're not confusing our characters between our individual selves. This helps maintain autonomy of ourselves and not confuse trauma with art. So that's the main reason I'm there. I'm also really there to facilitate communication and help create that culture of consent that we're longing for and very much in need for in the arts. So that's kind of what I do.
That's really great. I mean, I've seen this new role of intimacy coordinators is relatively new. And I've seen it on set before. So to be able to hear about I've watched intimacy coordinators, but they've never been able to explain it that way as far as we don't want to get our personal lives entangled, for the lack of a better word, with this character. So that's a really important role, especially for this. Just want to say the Strand Theater says we are deeply grateful to have Sierra as a part of our team. And just wanted to highlight that they are giving you your flowers. So congratulations.
So very kind.
So I want to open it up to the floor to your babies, Nelise. We've got some questions here. What was unique? Now, this is for anyone to ask. What was unique, or to answer, what was unique about the experience in preparing for this production as opposed to the other productions you've been a part of?
My baby's also shy, so you have to call on them.
Okay, baby number one. I think Quincy unmuted himself. So Quincy, why don't you go ahead? Please, let us
know. I think, well, we started off virtually, having virtual rehearsals, and I think we started to create a bond. We try to make sure that, we understood each other as just like people first, like we became a family first. And I think, that was really unique to me because usually, in rehearsals, you kind of just get started in the script. You don't really work on like bonding with, with your castmates or anything, which is fine. But I think with Naylisa's approach, she made it important for us to like have a bond, and that, I think that showed on stage. There was amazing chemistry on stage. Every scene, was just so beautiful just because of our chemistry alone. So that was unique to me because you don't get that in every show. You can like tell like, oh, they don't really mess around with each other like that off stage or something like that. But we all really became family, and I love every single one of my peoples.
Throw your hearts up in the air. That was so sweet. That was very, very sweet. So, Naylise, what did she do to bring you all? Did she do an infamous game night?
Yeah, we had a lot of games. I'm gonna let Devin hop on it.
That is so yeah, Devin, and then Shelby, please.
I was just gonna tag on to that. Something that I remember that was really, really special was one particular practice we had, or rehearsal. I remember that we just kind of sat, and then everybody came up one by one and just mentioned 3 things that they loved about one person particular in the cast. So it was like this moment where we could highlight every single person, their strengths, both on the stage and off the stage. And I think that was one of those times where it really brought us all together, because we were able to see, some of us felt like we were so deep in our process that we never really took the time to congratulate ourselves. And so that was like a perfect moment where you could see that you were loved from all different angles. So I really appreciated that.
Shelby?
Yeah, I would have to piggyback off of both what Quincy and Devin said. I think the virtual rehearsals made us bond, because you do I've been in shows where you just show up and that's just it, you go home. But this felt like, I feel like people always say, oh, we're a family, but we're gossiping about each other behind each other's backs. We're like, oh, did you see her do that on stage? That was not the right, like, and we didn't do that. Like when we were backstage, it was, like we were bigging up everybody else. And I think the preparation and for the show helped with that. I think also that what Devin mentioned helped as well. I feel so connected to each and every individual that was a part of the show. And I believe that 100% that God has these divine appointments for people in your life. I think it was meant for me to meet all of these people. And some of these people I've met before. I've met Dr. Nay before. I've met Naylise before. But I've met Quincy virtually before. But it was never in this type of setting. And, only God knew that I would be able to bond with them in this setting, in this way. They came at the right time for me. And I just look at them all like family. Like I love them like so much. It like almost brings tears to my eyes how much I really feel connected to all of them, because it was just amazing. And I don't want to ramble, but yeah, that's all.
No, that's not rambling at all, because you have to do a lot of time with people. So why not love and like the people that you're doing this time with? And it starts from the top. So when you have a great leader and a great director like Naylise, she's going to lead and bring the love that's in her within the cast. So
can I just say this, please? People really did not understand. Our process was super short. we rehearsed for a month and a half, and that wasn't even consistent every day. I want to say we had maybe a total of 20 something rehearsals, and the last 5 or 6 maybe guys were in person. Like everything else before that was on a computer screen. Sierra, you wanted to jump on in there?
I was just going to say it's a testament to all of you, just because I came into the process a little bit later, just because the rehearsal process was so truncated. So I was really only there for 3 days, and it was the last 3 days before they opened the show to do all of the intimacy. But every time I walked in the room, there was so much joy in the room. And I'm used to coming into different rooms and having to do work quickly. So that really wasn't a difference thing for me, but coming in and just feeling the joy in the room was so nice. After being without it for 18 months or however long. So it was just a real joy to be in the room and work with everyone. So a testament to you as well.
Thank you.
Neelise, can you just direct my life? Because
Not that I don't have control over. Sorry.
So just want to kick it off to a couple more questions here. And this one is also to anyone that may want to answer. Who is most like their character, or which character do you most relate to? Anyone who wants, I feel like I feel connected to Rachel. Rachel, like, it's coming to my mind. Let me know what you thought.
She's thinking so hard about this. She is our overthinker in the cast.
Beautiful.
I really am. I guess I'm thinking about Khalid, who played Kadeem in Termite. Like, he's not much like Termite in the bitches sucking, etc. But very much more like Kadeem. Like, he's fun. But he can also be very passionate and sincere. So I would say that.
Okay. Anyone else? Anyone else want to jump in? Devin, Quincy, Shelby?
I'll jump in for me. I am definitely Kimya, very Afrocentric, and also, step captain extraordinaire. That's me all day. Indignant at times as well, teasing my roommates.
Okay, since Neelise went, I feel like the character that I'm the most like is Sandra. Because how she talked to Pudding is basically how I talk to my real life Pudding, which is my nephew. Okay. That's just how I talk to him. And that's also on the other character, Dr. Goldberg. I'm a lot like Dr. Goldberg because that's how I talk to my students. So they were kind of inspired. Their cadence and their word choices and all that were very much inspired by me.
So I don't know how to word this, but the thing that it's obvious. I'm a woman. It's not obvious, but I identify as a woman. So I feel closest to the real woman, but not because she is the real woman, but because of what she symbolizes. A majority of my life, I've always felt like just the real woman. Like, people have looked at me as, the real woman as opposed to an individual. Not being seen for who I am, but for what I look like or what they think I bring to the table. And not really caring about how I feel, but what could they get from me? And so for me, I look at the real woman as just, that's the one character that I've identified with the most. Someone that is seeking people or desires someone to see her for who she is, the real woman, but with so much more behind that name.
Listen, why don't we all just throw up some snaps? Yeah. Whatever kind of snap, because this is all, I love how everyone's connecting and we're coming together and just sharing another part of ourselves. And I'm sure that somebody out there is also going to be able to relate to a lot of this. So thank you for sharing yourselves with us. Tiffany, Thomas is joining the chat. And we just want to take a moment to acknowledge these wonderful people who are here. Tiffany says, you guys work so well together. Any chance for this team to work on another project together?
Yes.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it since before the show ended. Like, I think a lot of us are even creating things intentionally for the cast just to be together again. So we've talked about all kinds of projects, whether they be a short. I know Devin is big on improv. I'm going to do a little plug for him. Whatever it is, we just want to do something together again. We don't care what it is. We're going to get it done.
Dope, dope, dope. I'm excited. We have Miss Celine Eves. I just want to make sure, I might say that wrong.
It's Celine. That's my mom.
Oh, well, Mama says, how much building background, if anything, was necessary? The characters were very much aligned to what we knew about both sitcoms characters, storylines, taglines, etc. Anyone want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think for me, playing Virtue, it is the Denise Huxtable character. And then we had to go back and watch as many episodes of The Cosby Show and A Different World to at least have that background. But for me personally, it took me a little while to understand the Denise character, especially the Virtue character, because it wasn't totally Denise. But I did have a hard time at first because, we loved Lisa Bonet, but wasn't getting a whole lot acting energy from her, so it was a little hard to pick that up at the start. But as we continued on the process, I started to learn that Virtue isn't Denise. Virtue is Virtue, which there's pieces of Denise in her. There's pieces of Freddie. There's pieces of even Whitley in there, and becoming this culmination of all these characters to build this whole new character who's going through this this experience in her life. So that was super helpful for me to kind of pull different pieces from the shows and move on from there.
Anyone else want to speak to this question?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback on what Rachel said, we were given links of episodes, the pudding, part one's based off of an actual episode of Theo's Holiday of The Cosby Show. So that was really good, context for me. Again, with Malcolm Jamal Warner, no shade to him, but he's a great actor, but at the same time, it's just I have to remember, I'm not him and he's not me. And at first I would ask myself, what would Theo do in this situation? Just in the back of my head, what would Theo do in this? But, Theo's not a part of this family. We're not, even though this is Cosby Satires, Thaddeus is Thaddeus, Theo is Theo. But, I still wanted to honor, where the character came from. I still wanted to honor just the background of the Cosby Show and the fact that, we are playing off of that show. So, again, Naylise allowed us to understand the separation, even though she's giving us the content, certain episodes from A Different World and episodes of the Cosby Show and articles. At the end of the day, our characters are our own. The H family, we don't know the Huxtables, and the Huxtables don't know the H family. However, we're still, representing them in a sense, if that makes sense. But there was a fine line between differentiating, those two characters. So.
I think without rambling on it, because I'm so bad at answering this question, the best way I can put it is I did a lot of research up top about Bill Cosby himself, because I thought that was initially what the play was centered around. And I watched documentaries. I did the whole 9 yards just because I wanted to understand the victims and I wanted to understand their stories. But there came a point where I had to create some sort of separation between the two. And sort of like Dr. Nay said earlier, I had to understand that, one, it's not about him, but it's also not about me either. Me, Devin, the actor, me, Mr. H. And just doing the best that I can to support these wonderful women in this play as well as the words that were put onto the page, and Naylise as well. And then just being a good supporter of this overall piece was what it came to be.
And that's great. I mean, I love it. Love to be able to hear when artists are able to do some research and background, but then you have to still separate yourself from that background. Because I think just what Dr. Nay said earlier was that it's a satire. So we're kind of making fun and bringing light to certain subjects, but this isn't the thing. So I think kudos to everybody, snaps to everybody, glasses up to everybody for doing their homework and making sure that this production became exactly what she wanted it to be. So thank you, Mom, for that question. We love you and appreciate you. So the next question that I have on here is, and this is to anyone who wants to answer, why did you want to be involved in this production? Devin, Rachel?
Oh, Rachel, you gonna go?
I answer the last two. You go, girlfriend.
So it's funny because I actually remember, I think it was around the time that Bill Cosby was convicted. I remember I saw something that Dr. Nay had posted. Like, she had posted like the name that she was working on this script. And so then I saw the email from Naylise after we had did a project together. And I was like, I have to audition. So I went and auditioned. I did the whole audition process. And the thing that made me okay with being a part of this was the fact that for my particular role, I required the intimacy choreography. The reason why I felt comfortable coming into this role is because Dr. Nay and Naylise reached out to me personally and informed me of what the role it would entail for me to be a part of the show. And that felt good because you don't get heads up. You show up, you do the first reading, and you find out you're supposed to.
Honey. Nope.
Yeah, like in the past, you just show up and you just find out you're supposed to simulate sex on stage and you should be okay with it. And if you don't, then you're looked at as unprofessional. And the fact that they were okay with my response, whether it was a yes or a no, that made me feel safe and that made me feel comfortable to be a part of it. So that's what drove me to. And also, I'm like, I wanted to support Dr. Nay because I like her.
We always want to support her. I love supporting her. First of all, she brings not only great work to the forefront, but she brings great people together. I mean, I met Naylise through Dr. Nay. So a lot of my relationships and good friendships have come from her. And so she just brings good energy. So it all starts at the top, y'all. All starts at the top. So anyone else want to say why they wanted to be a part of this?
If I could interject, I just wanted, Sierra was making a comment. I really wanted her to speak on that about what the process should be, because I mean, historically it has been what Shelby said. So what should the process be now? Or should it always been, I guess?
That was making me so upset. And I felt so bad that you've been through that. And I've been through that as an actor. And the fact that we think that's a standard is outrageous. But no, you can't ask for consent if the expectation and the information is never given. Then there's no way you can possibly get consent from someone. So that's ridiculous. For this cast, I tried, even though it was such a truncated process, to give a disclosure, to be like, hey, based off of reading this script, these are things that I see that could possibly be a part of your track. What are you comfortable with, just to get a baseline? This is not your boundary list or your boundary check, but it's giving me a baseline of what is a hard no. Because your safety, both mentally and physically, should always be of the utmost importance. This is a workplace. It's not, I don't understand why it is not treated as such, like with any other 9-to-5 job. It's a workplace. And specifically for young women and young Black women, their boundaries can be taken advantage of very easily. So physically makes me so sad that you have been put in that position. And it makes me so happy that I'm also here to like be on the phone and like drive somewhere and just be like, no, incorrect, and put those at rest. Because your boundaries are so valid and they are perfect exactly the way they are. And we can make a lot of magic happen in theater and the audience will get it. So you need to have faith in the process. Sorry, I can rant for days. But yeah, that's my soapbox moment. Thank you.
You're not ranting. You're giving light to things that should be discussed more often. And this is exactly it, especially in production in any kind of form. It's important to make sure that the actors aren't treated like cattle, as Hitchcock once called, performers. So human beings, especially Black human beings. So thank you for that. And thank you for doing that work. Anyone else want to jump in before I kick off my next question?
Sure. To be honest, it had been a year without doing theater, so I was desperate looking for something to do. And I happened to check my Facebook, which I never check, and it was there's a casting post on there about it, and then I learned it was about like sexual consent and sex education, with our topics I'm very passionate about. So it kind of felt perfect for me, and I did want to play Virtue. It was like, oh, well, just like one of the lead characters was like a fun thing to do. So I'm really grateful that it turned out the way it did, and just like meeting everybody for the first time, even in the early rehearsals, it was really neat to see how everyone blended together really well. So it felt like the right decision, and obviously seeing the play and having done it like it was. So yeah, desperate times, miss theater, and then it was like a perfect show for that. For my own interest too.
We've got a comment from the lovely Miss Celine. And she says, wow, Shernay, I'm not saying it like this isn't probably how she sounds, but I'm just going to personify my best belief. Wow, Shernay.
A little Brooklyn accent.
Oh,
like Brooklyn accent.
You asked. Wow, Shernay and Naylise. Love that you both thought and acted on respecting the actors in this manner. Shout out to you ladies. Much love, Brooklyn Boo. Okay, so that's my take. My take. Yeah, give me some snaps. That took a lot of effort. I'm never embarrassed, but I'm embarrassed in this moment. So thank you for sharing this. But seriously, love to you both for thinking of your actors, thinking of your team, and not just thinking of the words on the page, but knowing that to get the words out, you got to respect the people there. Yes, your mama is laughing at me because I definitely did a terrible accent. Mm-hmm. This is how she first met me. All right, moving on. So my next question is for Shelby. How is this production, which you spoke a little bit about in talking about your auditioning process and how much you appreciated this production, but how is this production bringing something new to the themes of consensual sex and a woman's right to choose?
Well, first, it'll make people feel more comfortable having a conversation. I find that most times, specifically in Black spaces, we're very uncomfortable talking about sex and consent. And then when we do have those conversations, we're very victim blaming. And even when it comes to a woman's right to choose, we're very judgmental about somebody's choices or what happened to someone. So I feel like anything in life that helps spark a dialogue about it is always beneficial, because I believe the most closed-minded individual could come and sit down at a table, watch this show, and then be like, if at the end of that show, they're like, so I have a question, then that means that piece did something. It started something, because maybe that person would have learned something, went home and taught their kids, or they went out to the bar that night and they decided not to be inappropriate with a woman, or they went home and they were like, yeah, that was the right decision for me to either keep or abort my baby. So, because it was a decision I made for myself. So I think the biggest thing is just starting a conversation. And then from that, people can learn. Yeah.
It's a great point of just anything that sparks dialogue is important, and it can change people's perceptions and everything. Dr. Nay, first of all, I'm just excited that this has brought so much dialogue. Do you see what you have started? Do you see what you have done? I hope you recognize, though, in all seriousness, like what you have brought to light. You've brought the discussion of the importance of intimacy whenever it comes to production and respecting people's bodies when they perform. And you've brought the discussion of consensual sex and the woman's right to choose. And you've brought together people that genuinely enjoy being together and building a family. And it all started because you had a vision. So I need for you to have a vision over my life. I just need it.
Girl, already you're real talk. I do have a vision over. I do. I see great things.
I love this, but in seriously, it's just hearing from everyone and being able to hear everyone's perspective is why you do production and why you do these things. And Naylise, bringing together the way that you wanted people to bond and come together is why you do production. So snaps to y'all. So I'm coming up on my last question, and this is open to all the cast. Did your conversations about consensual sex look anything like the H family? And was it anywhere close?
No. No, I never really had a conversation with my parents about, sex, let alone role playing. So this was definitely an eye opener, and I do believe some families are close enough to role play. I think it's amazing, whatever gets the point across, but nah, I never. No, my parents would almost be like the exact opposite. They were kind of like, oh, just stay away from, just don't have sex, kind of stay away from it. But it's important to talk about. It's important to understand that everyone has boundaries, and you need to respect those boundaries. But doing this play, it was just like, wow, this being in the role of Pudding, I kind of was trying to figure out, like, how does Pudding feel about all of this? And I appreciated it as Pudding, even though, like, especially that scene with Sandra, like, I was listening as Quincy, because it's just like, this is real stuff. I have a daughter, and now I'm thinking of ways, when she gets older, to have, like, conversation, because everyone needs to know. So it was a fun way of expressing important topics, and I think that's what brings a family close. The fact that for Pudding, the family knew, like, I wasn't going to get it unless we kind of had to, like, give him an actual visual, actually put him through it. Even though Sandra kind of gave it to me, like, point blank, like, she was just like, I ain't playing no games. Like, listen, this is what you got to do. So now this was definitely like a culture shock for me, but in a great way, for sure.
Devin?
My parents did not dress up. No. I wish they did. Yeah, I mean, for me growing up, I was thinking about it, and I was like, where did I really get these lessons from? And it's funny because it's sort of similar to the play in a way, but so my parents didn't really tell me too much. The school system was testing you on it, but like, I wasn't really getting the information at the time. But I did just so happen. So when I was very, very young and I first moved to the neighborhood that I live in, a lot of the like neighborhood kids were girls, and they were older than me. So like, they sort of took me in as like their like little brother. And as they were growing up and they were like learning about what they value for themselves, they would pass on that information to me. And so I think that a lot of that I got from them, actually. And luckily, it worked out. But I think that for this play specifically, I got the most like textbook information that I could possibly get. And regardless of, if I'm in this play later or not, I think that this play, the script itself, is the rules, and it's something that you can look back on and be like constantly reminding yourself of what is important and what to do and what not to do.
Anyone else want to jump in? Thank you for that, Devin. Thank you so much, Quincy.
I will say, so as a writer, of course, I'm inspired by so many things, but also my upbringing, my environment. I did not have a conversation about consent, but I definitely grew up in a family where I could ask any question to it. If I couldn't ask my mom, I could ask my aunt, and my aunt is a very straight shooter kind of person. Like, this language in this play is not something that I'm not accustomed to it and grow up around, since the beginning of my life. I don't remember like ever covering my ears because someone said a curse word. That's just not my family. People just speak freely. And so like that, the language of just how comfortable the H family was with like having a conversation without any filter is very much a part of my upbringing. But the conversation around consent itself, I am pretty sure that my mom and my aunt, the primary people who raised me, primary people in my village who raised me, probably, if I had to take a guess, did not know what consent was until they sat down and watched this play. It's just one of those things where I feel culturally we're learning about. I talked to a young lady who came to one of our in-person shows. I talked to her after the show about, she shared her story during the talk back about not knowing what consent was, not even knowing what happened to her. And we had a conversation afterwards, which I won't share because it was private, but just we had a real moment where, I shared with her, I didn't know either. Like, you're 15 years younger than me, but, just 5 years ago, I had a similar story and did not know. Did not even realize that what had happened to me was, by textbook definition, sexual assault. That just was never taught to me. And so writing this play, I really felt inspired after what had happened to me, especially. And then also, the news, the verdict on Bill Cosby, it really just created this kind of snowball effect to where I said, okay, if I don't know, and I consider myself fairly educated, I don't know, and no one that I'm talking to knows, then maybe there's a lesson to be learned here, and that really was the catalyst that inspired me to write this piece. So I'm happy to hear when, Devin says that this is the rule book. That warms my heart to know that there is on the other end of this script somebody who's learning something. But I will also add this one last thing. Just like the script said, the rules change. The rules will continue to change. So even as written, things have already changed. So it's just about just continuously educating ourselves and asking questions and making sure that we're creating safe spaces at all times when we're being intimate with others. And I don't even just mean having sex with people, but just any form of intimacy is important for us to just establish those boundaries at all times, because the rules, like I said, they change.
Sierra, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think that was so eloquently put. Just the rules do change. And I also think that there's this idea that we have to be perfect and on all the time, which very much isn't true. And as people are figuring out what consent is, especially adolescents, or even now, all of us are unlearning so many behaviors from imperialism and the patriarchy and lots of other isms. But we are unlearning so much all the time. And so it's okay to make a mistake. What is important is acknowledging it and apologizing and figuring out a way to move forward. So we're not continuing a cycle of violence towards a partner or a loved one or a friend. That's not a friendship. It's manipulation at that point, whether in a workplace or in a platonic or romantic relationship. And I think getting out of that mindset that we have to be perfect and always know everything is not conducive to us growing as people and as artists. So that was so eloquently put. The rules change, and we have to embrace that change and grow with them, because we as people change, and the things that we like and dislike change as well, and we kind of got to roll with it. That's all.
Shelby, I see you pondering on something. You want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I was thinking of, there's a line in the script that says, Termite, Khalid. Termite says, my father always told me no means no. If she don't say no, that means she must do it. And then later in the script, Sandy says yes means yes, and Pudding's confused. And I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine. I was telling her about, I was very hesitant to tell anybody about my experience with consent, because you don't want to tell anybody, because and so I was like, I'm gonna be vulnerable with my friend, and I'm gonna tell my friend. My friend said to me, well, for most men, no means yes. And that really, like, with Dr. Nate talking and with Sierra talking, it's just like, and mind you, this was like 2018, maybe 2018, 2017, around that time. So the fact that just 3 years ago, it's 3 years ago, right? Just 3 years ago, so people still had this mindset. People don't understand that yes means yes. Like, the first no is the only thing that you need for you to say, oh, okay, I'm gonna leave this person alone. And for me, my mom said at the talk back, she said, nobody should touch you any kind of way. And I knew that, but growing up, I needed more than that. I needed more than just nobody should touch you any kind of way, because it's like, well, what if this person, I like this person, and it might not be something that I want to do, but in order for them to like me, they're pressuring me. So I want to say yes. I mean, I want to say no, but I want them to like me. Like, the topic of consent is so important, but it is a very nuanced conversation that needs to be had. It doesn't just need to be children. Don't let a stranger touch your privates, or don't let somebody touch your private. It is, when somebody makes you, if somebody's pressuring you to have sex and saying, oh, if you love me, you'll do it, that is rape. That is sexual assault. If you said no, but the person keeps following you, that is sexual assault. And I wish I had those conversations growing up, because I didn't. I grew up in a religious household. So it was like Quincy. It was just, don't do it till you're married. Sex is not even an option for you. And so then you meet people, and it's like, well, I want to be liked. So, but I don't want to have sex. So I'm going to do it anyway because I want them to like me. So I think
Shelby, that's something, and the guys weigh in on this if you've had this experience, but because I feel like what you're describing is what so many women go through. It's this, well, I don't want to hurt his feelings, like putting that person's or her feelings, because it's not just a heterosexual thing. In the Atlanta cast, one of the ladies who's her first was with a woman. She's a lesbian, but she didn't give consent. So all I'm saying, this ain't a heterosexual thing, but there's something in us as women that makes us feel like, oh, well, we don't want to hurt that person's feelings. It's like you're putting other people's feelings before your own, even if you don't want that. And I've talked to so many women who, and guys, let me know if this applies to you too. I don't know. I'm not a guy, so I don't know. But I just know, like, so many women have had that story where they feel like, well, I really didn't want to do it, but I didn't know how to say no, or I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know how to articulate my boundaries. I think that's what it comes down to. I did not know how to articulate my boundaries.
Let me tell you, I don't have a problem sharing this. It was a situation. I don't know if my parents are watching this, but I was laying in bed next to a gentleman, and he kept trying. And I was like, I'm not in the mood. I'm not in the mood. He kept trying. I'm not in the mood. I'm not in the mood. He tried again. I'm not in the mood. He got cold. It was like, and I was like, so, trying to have a conversation, completely ignored me. At that point, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to leave. But as I was driving home, I was like, I feel bad. Maybe I should have just did it, because then he wouldn't have stonewalled me, put a wall up, and just ignored me. Literally, when I get home that day, you know what he says to me? Do you know what he says to me? We shouldn't be dealing with each other because we're not equally yoked. And
no, he didn't. The devil is a liar.
I was like,
he did not. No, he did not. Woo, Jesus.
So imagine if I was like, oh, okay, well then, all right, fine. Like that's the conversation that needs to be, because people don't talk about that, because then, people have conversations, people say, oh, well, she just woke up and it was just, she felt, not, what's the phrase they're using now? The morning after regret. You woke up in the morning and you feel regret. No, maybe I woke up in the morning and was like, I'm evaluating the situation and like, I literally said I didn't want to. That person pressured me and I did it. How does that feel? Like, there's always ways in which we want to give the person a pass on pressuring somebody, but we always want to say, well, you made the decision. You're an adult. You made that choice. But it's like, that's not always the case.
Well, I will also say this, and that even goes back to like the writing change, talking about the rules changing. That yes means yes sometimes was great for me, because I know that sometimes we can even vocalize a yes, but not feel a yes.
It has to be an enthusiastic yes.
Yeah, it's not a with hesitation. Because for them it's like, all right, well, she gave consent, but that yes not showing up physically, emotionally, can really change the game, for someone in those circumstances. So I think that's something that needs to continue to be explored, in what a yes looks like, feels like, sounds like, and how that's internalized for both parties in terms of consent.
And I'm glad you brought that up, and Sierra mentioned enthusiastic yes. So when I wrote this is how quickly these rules have changed. When I wrote this, the language was an explicit yes. You notice in the script it said it's explicit yes, but now the language is enthusiastic yes. So now I'm like, okay, again, rules have changed. So I'm in my rewrites. I'm like, I'm gonna rewrite that real woman scene, because even some of her language where she's like, she's not really giving yeses. She's like, yeah, that sounds like us. I can't remember. You tell me your line, Shelby. I can't remember them. But I'm going to rewrite that scene, because parts of that scene, so that she is giving that like very enthusiastic yes. Just an example of how the rules have changed. One final point, because I know we're about to wrap up. I will say this, like, even in this work, we're talking about putting a lot, but even in Virtue, we didn't really touch on the themes in Virtue that much. But in both plays, there are a lot of things that I would have hoped that the audience could walk away with. But one of the things that I've learned, and I know we have writers in this room, Erica, Naylee, Shelby, I don't know, Quincy and Devin or Sierra, if you're writers as well. But one thing that I think as writers we've learned, or you're going to learn if you haven't learned, you cannot help how people interpret your dang on script. I mean, you could just flat out give it to them straight up like Sandy did, and they still going to interpret it with however way that they interpret. They're bringing themselves to the theater. And there's one example of this from one of the shows. Someone who saw the show and loved the show, said, I'm going to have this conversation with my child. I'm not going to say the gender of the child, because I think I'll give it away. But she said, I'm going to have this conversation. Actually, I have to say the gender. I think I have to say the gender. She said, I want to have this conversation with my son, because these fast girls, her son is 7. These fast girls that are around my child, Just thinking to myself, like, what play did she watch? But her interpretation of the script was that, she has to warn her son against these fast girls. That's what she got from this daggone play. Well, I think I'm going to have this conversation with my son about on the flip side. We can't help how people interpret this script, but I'm glad that somebody somewhere has got a lesson about consent. And I'm glad that as a cast, you all bonded and really dug deep into these themes, and hopefully will carry forth the actual message of the show to your people. But just know that we have a long ways to go as a society before we fully understand collectively what this thing is. So this play is just like a fraction of the effort that's needed to be had in order to get us there as a society. So we're just a small piece of this puzzle, but I'm happy that you all are a part of it.
Snaps, come on. And thank you so much for that and for bringing everything to the screen. I just want to, before we close, mention that the show will be available for viewing throughout this weekend. So please visit the Strand's website at www.strand-theater.org. Not an apostrophe. Hyphen, y'all. Hyphen. All right. So again, it's www.strand-theater.org. Please take the time to watch it if you haven't. I just want to say congratulations to you all. Thank you for allowing me to just take a moment to be with you all, to hear your stories, to sit here and stand with you in exactly what this play means, which is everything that I believe in. So thank you for that. And we hope that you all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for letting us be here for this moment. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.